compared to the unbelievable ethical and ecological challenge we face as humanity and what can we possibly do about it, there's a sense in which I can say veganism is easy. Veganism is easy compared to transitioning to being a society fueled by solar power. Compared to the difficulty for you as an individual in ceasing to use a car entirely, or for us as a society to have 50% of people stop using cars, to eliminate cars and trucks, or even significantly reduce cars and trucks. That's hard. Compared to those things, being vegan is easy. But I gotta tell you, as a diet, as a weight loss diet, as a diet to be beautiful, veganism is not easy. The only thing that has moved him to consider the plight of cows that are raised to die in veal crates, which is a moving sight to the most stone-hearted of nihilists, myself included. The idea of an animal being born, taken away from its mother, put in a plastic shed, to be born and raised and live, only to die, to be turned into veal. And guess what, guys? The veal industry and the dairy industry are not two separate industries. They are two stages of one and the same industry. You don't produce dairy without veal. You don't produce veal without dairy. This is a constant process of cows living their whole life on a concrete floor surrounded by steel rails with a steel shed for a sky, living just to die, forcibly inseminated, having their children taken away from them, etc. Because if they're not constantly impregnated again and again, they're not producing milk. And Kevin Smith is a guy who has gone out of his way repeatedly to laugh at that and to encourage others to laugh at it, to laugh at veganism as an ethical cause, as an ecological cause, to take absolutely no responsibility for anything until his own health puts him at death's door.
I saw a fucking sign drawn on like this public utility thing. And it said, not your mom. Had a picture of a cow's head, like Bessie Borden cow or whatever. Not your mom, not your milk. Really made me think. It made me feel really bad. It's probably because I drink a lot of milk. I drink like a gallon and a half of milk a day. Poor little cows are rolling around a field going like, we're so thirsty. And I'm like, I'm not.
À-bas-le-ciel.
Hey guys, I'm broadcasting in my pajamas, in natural sunlight, no makeup, no preparation, no script. This is what YouTube was invented for. It's commonly said amongst vegans that, our real enemy is just ignorance and indifference. That our enemy is not people who are anti-vegan, but just people who've never really thought about veganism, people who've never really questioned the dietary habits that their own grandparents had, the assumptions and values, whether those are ecological, ethical, or health-related, because veganism engages with all three. Well, guess what? Kevin Smith just had a heart attack. And he is in the vocal minority of people who are not just passively ignorant of veganism, but who were actively anti-vegan. Part of the reason for this is just that Kevin Smith is someone who has recorded hundreds and hundreds of hours of YouTube videos and podcasts. I'm also in that category. Yes, I have a much smaller audience, but I think I have about 900 videos on YouTube now. So once you get over a certain threshold, you find yourself speaking on the record about topics that you probably thought you'd never talk about, you'd never take a stand on or have a position on. I realized that veganism was not a high priority for this guy. It's not something he was really sincerely interested in. But he has taken the time at some length to state why he is against veganism. He is married to a woman who is vegetarian, and they've been married for many, many years. So within his own home, he's talked about what it's like to live with someone, eating, I assume, 2 or 3 meals a day, but eating very often with someone who is vegetarian. Well, he continued to eat meat, and while he had tremendous health problems linked to eating meat, most obviously obesity, he struggled with obesity. He's now looking leaner, but he's also on a gurney with this heart attack that could have killed him just a couple days ago, right? Being lean and indeed being beautiful has remarkably little to do with being healthy. Of course, it's natural that we all have this assumption that being beautiful means that you're healthy and that being healthy will make you beautiful. But it's not merely in a technical sense that it's not true. Just lately, this is a tangent, but it's related to what I want to say here about Kevin Smith. I've really noticed 2 major vegan YouTubers, one called Mike the Vegan and one called Plant-Based News, going back to the form of advocacy for veganism that tries to, perpetuate the myth that all vegans look like bikini models, or that if you become vegan, you will have a bikini body, or that any significant percentage of the people who earn their living that way, any significant percentage of the people who are professional models, professional beautiful people, professional actors or actresses with that kind of torso, shall we say. Torso is the word here. A lean torso, a muscular torso. So that any significant percentage of those people are vegan, or that veganism helped them do it.
The leading vegan models and influencers, and asked them to share their secrets. In this video, they outline the benefits of going plant-based and describe how excess weight and illness melted away.
Here is the before and here is the after. I know, not the most intense weight loss ever, but does she have a time machine? Her and her boyfriend just watched the documentary Earthlings and then thankfully switched to a more healthy vegan diet. The first one is like, it's Aunt Vicky on the cruise, you know. Then all of a sudden she's like 20 years younger in a later picture. It's the same person though. Pretty amazing. The power of plants.
And that's overlooking what I think is the real mass phenomenon with veganism, which is that the vast majority of people, including very athletic people, when they first switch to a vegan diet, they struggle with their weight, which is, say, they gain weight. They get fatter on a vegan diet. They're deeply disappointed with the diet because it doesn't deliver those results. It definitely doesn't deliver them effortlessly, right? And flatulence. Okay, being all the way real, most people are not accustomed to a diet that involves eating beans and bean products 3 meals a day. I was just drinking soy milk. As you can tell, for me, this is first thing in the morning, but I wake up and eat soy milk, which is made out of beans, and whether it's the protein powder I'm eating or whole foods, processed or unprocessed foods, a lot of hard-to-digest, high-protein roughage is in the vegan diet. And of course, and that's once you've figured out how to have enough protein as a vegan, which has a lot to do with eating a lot of beans. And as I say, that can really bring about a lot of digestive issues. When you haven't figured it out yet, just the amount of carbohydrates and sugar in the vegan diet and the lack of feeling satiated the way you're used to feeling satiated. Foods, dairy is unbelievably unhealthy, dairy products for you, right? Foods like cheese, but most of these people have had cheese and meat as a crutch of their diet from early childhood. And when you eat, for example, a cheeseburger, something that combines cheese and ground beef, you're getting a ton of salt, an unbelievable amount of salt, and a ton of fat, and a ton of protein, all in one package, all at one time. And it's extremely filling. And then, you may not be aware of it if you're a meat eater and you've grown up with it. You have a feeling of fullness that you almost never get on a vegan diet. For me now, I've been vegan for so long, I have the opposite problem. Like, I find bread overwhelmingly filling if I eat too much of it at once. I know that's crazy. I had an olive bread that had olives in it and olive oil in it. And I couldn't believe it. Felt like, I felt like I was eating something like cheese, like something very filling. So you can I think this is just a psychological change, not a physiological change, in terms of how you feel about rich and filling food. Things do change eventually as a vegan. But, look, compared to the unbelievable ethical and ecological challenge we face as humanity and what can we possibly do about it, there's a sense in which I can say veganism is easy. Veganism is easy compared to transitioning to being a society fueled by solar power. Compared to putting up solar panels on every rooftop in Los Angeles or filling the Mojave Desert with solar panels, compared to the other changes in our society that would have similar ecological benefits, compared to saving any one watershed, compared to preventing the Panama Canal from filling up with silt due to erosion, compared to solving the unbelievable crisis in water pollution we have that's caused by cattle farming, pig farming, chicken farming, and then the related use of fertilizers, because these things are linked both to produce the food for the animals and in terms of what's done with the poo and runoff of those animals and manufacturing into fertilizer. These are, ecological problems on an unbelievable scale, and you can just Google them a little bit and get a sense of the math of what I'm talking about here. Compared to the difficulty for you as an individual in ceasing to use a car entirely, or for us as a society to have 50% of people stop using cars, to eliminate cars and trucks, or even significantly reduce cars and trucks. That's hard. Compared to those things, being vegan is easy. But I gotta tell you, as a diet, as a weight loss diet, as a diet to be beautiful, veganism is not easy. And it's partly not easy because we didn't grow up with this culturally. We didn't grow up with our grandparents teaching us how to do this. And it's also difficult because of those reasons that a lot of vegans will lie to you about. It's not that easy to get enough protein. It's not that easy to get enough calcium. It's not that easy to get enough zinc. Of course, it's not easy to get B12. You got to take a vitamin for B12. And it's not easy to learn to really balance your macros and have a vibrant, high protein, low fat, moderate carb diet as a vegan, especially when you're not into it.
The benefits of going plant-based, and describe how excess weight and illness melted away.
If you walk into any corner store and just look at the rack of women's magazines, Cosmopolitan magazine, I don't even know the name of these magazines. Sorry, magazines like Cosmopolitan magazine, or it doesn't matter if they're magazines aimed at a women's market or a men's market, a lot of them have women in revealing attire. They have this image of the slim, athletic woman on the cover and filling the pages of these magazines, the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. Just ask yourself, what percentage of those women are achieving and maintaining that body, that look, that appearance through a vegan diet? The answer is very close to zero. And many of those magazines are full of diet advice, weight loss advice, fitness advice from those same women telling you how they do it. And of course, that's about having some kind of strictly controlled meat-based diet, right? So that's about the outer appearance. And of course, one flip side of that is cholesterol and its effects are invisible. I've known people much slimmer than myself who are not vegan, who did have heart attacks. I remember one guy, and he was living in Thailand. He was a lot slimmer than I was, and he was living on Thai street food, from food stall vendors. And people think that's so much healthier than eating at McDonald's, but it's all little bits of meat in oily, spicy sauces and that kind of thing. Street vendor food in Thailand, that was what he ate. It's kind of 7 days a week. He was a white guy living in Thailand, and yeah, during the time I knew him, he collapsed and nearly died and was hospitalized. And the question was whether they're going to put a shunt into his veins and arteries and so on. People want to believe that beauty is virtue and virtue is beauty, and it's not. Whether or not you have cholesterol clogging your arteries, whether or not you have cholesterol clogging the pathways of the brain, which is terrifying. Long before it gets to the point of being Alzheimer's disease, it's still terrifying. And to say I have mixed feelings about somebody like Kevin Smith, who has actively come out and been anti-vegetarian and anti-vegan for years, would be a lie. I don't have mixed feelings. I only feel harsh condemnation towards this guy. The only thing that has moved him to consider the plight of cows that are raised to die in veal crates, which is a moving sight to the most stone-hearted of nihilists, myself included. The idea of an animal being born, taken away from its mother, put in a plastic shed, to be born and raised and live, only to die, to be turned into veal. And guess what, guys? The veal industry and the dairy industry are not two separate industries. They are two stages of one and the same industry. You don't produce dairy without veal. You don't produce veal without dairy. This is a constant process of cows living their whole life on a concrete floor surrounded by steel rails with a steel shed for a sky, living just to die, forcibly inseminated, having their children taken away from them, etc. Because if they're not constantly impregnated again and again, they're not producing milk. And Kevin Smith is a guy who has gone out of his way repeatedly to laugh at that and to encourage others to laugh at it, to laugh at veganism as an ethical cause, as an ecological cause, to take absolutely no responsibility for anything until his own health puts him at death's door, until a doctor tells him, if you don't change, you're going to die. And Kevin Smith, you think of yourself as a moral person. I've heard you being an amateur moral philosopher. He used to think of himself as a religious person, and we've heard his religious philosophy for years too, in his films and in his podcasts and everything else. Kevin Smith, you are the lowest of the low. You are a scumbag. You richly deserve the consequences of your actions, which in your case were not made out of ignorance. You're in the tiny minority of people who really consciously and intentionally chose this.
Really made me think. Fuck. You know what I'm saying? How fucking dark is that? I'm like, I'm just enjoying this. I looked over, sipping the milk. I'm like, I guess you're right.
It's like, did they lie to me? Do we have to kill cows for this milk now?
Obviously, if your doctor now orders you to be in a plant-based diet, you can be in a plant-based diet. But I can't say that you'll ever be welcome in the vegan movement, because the vegan movement is all about taking responsibility, not just for the consequences of our actions as individuals, but the consequences of our actions collectively as a society in the 21st century, which involves the suffering and death of millions of animals to produce food that is both unnecessary and unhealthy, that of course causes unbelievable suffering to human beings with conditions like heart attacks, but also causes unbelievable damage through air pollution, water pollution, and creating a cycle of industrialized misery that is frankly beyond belief. If I describe to you what we do every day in industrial meat production, if I described it to you as an idea for a science fiction novel, you'd say, that's not believable. You'd say, what kind of cartoonish supervillain would invent such a thing? All right? But it is all too believable in the world we live in right now.
I still haven't given up milk though. It's tasty.
Like, fuck you, thirsty cows.
Yeah, really. I mean, we're all like, every man for himself, cows included.
Sorry.
So, fucking shit. Milk does the body good. That's what I tell a cow. Looks at me all like, why? I'm like, well, this milk does
He's
the
got
body
a milk
good.
hose right in his face. Just drink it.
I don't know, but you know what? I don't even waste it, man. I'm not even one of those cats that's like, ooh, I drink every fucking time. So I know if there are cows out there, they're like, fucking prick. At least I'm drinking it. Some cats throw it out and shit. Milk never expires in my house. So there, I'm justified.
That's a promise.
À-bas-le-ciel.